haunting folks of the interwebs. I'm Alexa, the resident ooky spooky girly, and welcome back to my favorite corner of all things weird and unknown. Today's video is an interesting one, since before today, I only really knew detailed information about the Titanic and not so much about other ghostly ships. I remember in high school when I watched the James Cameron film from the VHS box set and having to switch the tapes. It was a pretty cool time. While it's not on the list today, since I'm assuming everyone knows about it, it's definitely deserving of an honorable mention. If anyone has recommendations of ships I should learn about, please do let me know in the comments. Before I get entirely sidetracked, here are the top 5 haunted shipwrecks with terrifying backstories. In 5th place, we have the Mary Celeste. Probably the most famous mystery ship on our list today is the Mary Celeste, a merchant brigantine that was found drifting in December of 1872 off the Azores with her crew of 10 nowhere to be found. The Canadian brigantine Di Grazia found her in a disheveled but seaworthy condition under partial sail and with her lifeboat missing. Now the ship was, missing a lifeboat. There were signs that something had gone wrong, and to be specific, one of its pumps was dismantled, but the ship was still seaworthy and there was no hint as to why the crew and passengers had abandoned it. The last entry in her log was dated 10 days earlier. She had left New York City for Genoa on November 7th and, still had plenty of provisions when she was found. Her cargo of alcohol was intact and the captain's and crew's personal belongings were undisturbed. None of those who had been on board were ever seen or heard from ever again. Among the missing was the captain, his wife, and their very young daughter. On December 23rd of 1872, during a court hearing to try and establish just what happened, Frederick Solly Flood, who was the Attorney General of Gibraltar, ordered an examination of the Mary Celeste, which was carried out by John Austin, surveyor of shipping, with the assistance of a diver, Ricardo Puntonato. Austin noted cuts on each side of the bow caused by a sharp instrument and found possible traces of scarlet fluid on the captain's sword. His report emphasized that the ship did not appear to have been struck by heavy weather, citing a vial of sewing machine oil found upright in its place. Now, Austin did not acknowledge that the vial might have been replaced since the abandonment, nor did the court raise this point. Fortunato's report on the hull concluded that the ship had not been involved in a collision or run aground. A further inspection by a group of Royal Navy captains endorsed Austin's opinion that the cuts on the bow had been caused deliberately. They also discovered stains on one of the ship's rails that might have been bodily liquids, together with a deep mark possibly caused by an axe. Now, these findings strengthened Flood's suspicions that human wrongdoing, rather than natural disaster, lay behind the mystery. On January 22nd of 1873, he sent the reports to the Board of Trade in London, adding his own conclusion that the crew had got at the alcohol on board and killed the Briggs family and the ship's officers in a drunken frenzy. They had cut the bows to simulate a collision, then fled in the yawl to suffer an unknown fate. Flood thought that Morehouse and his men were hiding something, specifically that Mary Celeste had been abandoned in a more easterly location, and that the log had been doctored. He just couldn't accept that the Mary Celeste could have traveled so far while uncrewed. Now, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, author of the Sherlock Holmes mysteries, helped make the ship famous with a short story vaguely based on the event, in which foul play explained the enigma. A 2007 theory, reported by the Smithsonian, suggests that perhaps the captain made the call to abandon ship in sight of land after the ship's pumps became fouled. Now, normally it would be unusual for a captain to abandon a seaworthy vessel, but the captain may not have been able to tell how much water the ship was taking on with the pumps broken. The ship was also slightly off course and had been battling bad weather, which may have prompted the captain to take the chance at land when he could. To this day, the crew of the mysterious vessel was never found. And despite many theories, no one can say with surety why the ship was abandoned in the first place. So the Mary Celeste sailed for 12 years after it was abandoned and finally struck the Rochelles Reef off of the coast of Haiti and became stuck there. And the ship is still there today, and the shipwreck was discovered in 2001. In 4th place, we have the Patriot. Aaron Burr, the 3rd Vice President of the United States, is most famous for killing former Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton in a duel. Yeah, make all the Hamilton jokes in the comments. I will admit, I had the "pardon me, are you Aaron Burr, sir?" pop into my head when I was first reading about this particular wreck. But I'm not here to talk about the plot of the musical, but instead, the daughter. So Theodosia disappeared at sea at the age of 29, along with the rest of the passengers and crew on a schooner called the Patriot. The Patriot was traveling from Charleston, North Carolina to New York City in December of 1812 with Theodosia Burr aboard on a journey to visit her father. The last sighting of the ship was on January 2nd of 1813, when a storm blew in and the ship was never heard from again. Aaron believed for the rest of his life that the ship sank and that his daughter was dead, but wild rumors flew about the ship's fate. Some said that the ship had not gone down in bad weather, but had been captured by pirates, and the crew and passengers were taken prisoner or, killed. For years there were rumors that Theodosia had survived or washed ashore dead, or that her killers had confessed. Perhaps one of the spookiest occurrences was the 1869 discovery of a painting of a well-heeled young woman in the home of a North Carolina woman whose family looted ships for a living. It had been found aboard on an abandoned vessel that had drifted ashore at Nag's Head on the Outer Banks, which is That's what she told the doctor who treated her. Theodosia Burr was said to have been bringing a very similar portrait to New York as a gift for her father. So let me know y'all's theories in the comments. In third place, we have the MV Salem Express. The story of this French passenger ferry is sometimes referred to as the most tragic shipwreck in the Red Sea. In December of 1991, the ship was about an hour away from the Safaga port when it crashed into a reef on the Egyptian coast. The ferry started sinking within a matter of minutes, taking the lives of approximately 500 people. The disaster actually sparked controversy over the number of lost lives, with officials reporting that there were 690 people on board and only 180 were saved. Today, the Salem Express is a popular diving destination because of its surprisingly well-preserved state. Divers can still see the remains of luggage, including toys, clothes, and automobiles. Some have also reported hearing the sounds of children laughing and car engines revving. Sure, because diving isn't scary enough with all the health risks. Gotta add some malevolent ghosties along with it. In second place, we have the Andrea Doria. So the Andrea Doria was an Italian ocean liner that currently sits off of the coast of Massachusetts. Before it collided with the Stockholm, which tore into the Andrea Doria's hull, causing it to slowly tilt on its side before sinking, 11 hours later, the ocean liner was considered virtually unsinkable. See, I'm making a face because if I had a nickel for every time a ship that was called unsinkable sunk, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Also, I'm just not big on tempting fate. The ship had been outfitted with the latest navigational equipment, including 2 sets of radar, and was designed with 11 watertight compartments. Now, the compartments were constructed so that the boat would remain afloat if any 2 were breached, and so that, she would never take on a list of more than 15 degrees. As an extra safety precaution, her lifeboats could still be launched if the list reached 20 degrees. Fun fact about the Andrea Doria was that it was the first liner to possess 3 outdoor swimming pools, 1 each for first, cabin, and tourist class. Now, the wreck only took 46 lives when it happened, but 16 people have since died exploring the wreck. What's left is in a remote spot at the edge of the continental shelf in about 240 feet of water, and most personal effects like money are still aboard. This makes the wreck very attractive for divers, but the ship's twisting passageways have become a fatal maze for some, while others have succumbed to failed equipment or decompression sickness, which happens when divers ascend too quickly and dissolved gases bubble out of the, red fluid under the reduced pressure. And that's why, while I love the idea of learning how to scuba dive one day, you'll never find me actually doing it. A little too risky for my liking. Despite having less name recognition than the Titanic, the Italian wreck is now considered by many to be the Mount Everest of underwater exploration. Some folks simply kneel on the historic hull, while others rummage through the wreck in search of mementos, such as, China from the well-appointed cruise liner to take home and frame. And hey, every once in a while, someone gets lucky. In 2010, 2 divers from New Jersey unearthed the 75-pound bell that once adorned the Doria's deck. Apparently, it only takes, 4 minutes to reach the wreck from the surface. Once divers reach the wreck, though, things can get much more complicated. The more time divers spend breathing the specially tailored mix of gases required to survive at such depths, the longer they'll have to spend making their way painstakingly back to the surface. A typical Doria dive includes only 15 or 16 minutes exploring the wreck before divers must leave. And during those few minutes, divers affix strobe lights to the mooring line to help find their way back. Some hook lines of their own, wound into reels on their equipment, onto the wreck near the mooring line so they can find their way back when their time in the wreck runs out. Some of those who have died got tangled or lost in the wreck. Others have panicked, spit out their mouthpieces, and drowned. No big. A big part of the danger is the depth and the risk of nitrogen narcosis, which once again is a condition that can occur below 100 feet, in which too much nitrogen builds up in that red little fluid, causing a level of impaired thinking that is often compared to alcohol intoxication. In first place, we have the Hunley. The Civil War submarine, the H.L Hunley, is a ship that managed to sink not once, not twice, but 3 times. Look, I'm all for recycling, but with that kind of track record, someone should have clued in after, the second time. When the precious kitty known as Unsinkable Sam survived more than 2 wrecks, someone eventually decided to keep him on land and avoid, cursing further ships. Those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. Just saying. First demonstrated in 1863, the ship is famous as one of the initial forays into developing combat submarines. She carried Confederate Navy men to Charleston Harbor, attempting to break a Union blockade that was limiting the city. On the very first mission, the Hunley sank at the dock when either the wake of a ship swamped it or tangled lines dragged it underwater, and caused the passing of, 5 men on board. The sub was recovered and launched again a few months later. Some idiot on board left a valve open and it sank, killing the entire 8-man crew. The back-to-back disasters did not dissuade the Confederate Navy, though. Sure, I guess we can chalk the second incident up to human error, but the vibes I'm getting are off. The ship was found, modified, and put back in service for a February 1864 mission in which it sunk the USS Housatonic, killing 5. And, it would turn out to be a deadly mission for the Hunley's crew. The sub and all aboard were never heard from again until 1995, when a team of wreck hunters rediscovered it, with all 8 crew members inside. And in 2000, the wreck was raised. To this day, no one knows what doomed the Hunley's final mission. She may have been crippled by her own torpedo, or trapped by ill-favored tides, leaving the crew to die of asphyxia when their air ran out. They may have been clipped by a Union rescue ship that never even noticed the collision, or perhaps someone managed a lucky shot that disabled the sub's captain and sent water pouring into the vessel. I guess we'll never know. And that brings us to the end of our list, and yep, scuba diving is never going to be in my future. Yes, the thought of meeting ghosties underwater is tempting, but not enough to risk my health. With my forgetful ADHD and impulsiveness, a slow timed rise at the end of an expedition does not sound like a safe thing for me. Please let me know in the comments if there are any experienced scuba divers out there, and if my concerns are, within proper parameters, or if I'm just overreacting. Oh, and while you're in the comments, could you possibly leave us a little like, subscribe if you aren't already, and why not just hit the bell for more from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos. Thanks lovelies, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.